Mental Climate. Copyright 2021 by Seta Asset. Prologue. Throughout the years and beyond, there was never a time when the world stopped recreating itself. This was a time when Mother Nature had it up to here with mankind. Everything they did reflected their misdeeds, from deforestation to using fossil fuels. Mishandling ways of disposing tons of garbage, which was mainly plastic compost, did not work to produce a cleaner and robust climate. Many sought ways to assist in restoring nature, a little at a time. Could they help in the change, or was it futile from the start? Chapter 1. Analysis. Jaelyn sat proud in her loft high above the vistas in Colorado. From her vantage point, she could see clear across the mesa. Once upon a time, it had been deemed unlivable and ruined by pollution. She thought there was no chance of humanity ever seeing the beauty of nature again. But when she realized there had been a change concerning the sun and the moon, as well as nature itself, then surely Alton Braniger, her science professor, and his colleagues knew what was happening too. She majored in environmental science with an undergraduate degree in meteorology. She remembered reading what it was like before the cleansing. For some time now, the local news agencies across the world had been reporting major changes in the weather. There was more rainfall recorded in a month than usual. But that wasn't the worst of it. When it came to that huge white ball in the sky, known as the sun, everything was heating up. Not only were the people suffering the effects of the stifling humidity and radiation poisoning, but the most telling signs were the fields and the forests. They were turning into brown blades of useless grass and diseased trees. The stress from the sun made them indisputably impossible to maintain. Most scientists and scholars knew the time would come when the earth felt a cleansing was needed. But everyone thought it was just a saying and a myth. They'd hope there would be enough time to reverse what was done by mankind throughout the ages. What had man done to cause the universe to retaliate against him? No one thought the planet had vibrations and, quote, feelings. In this case, Jaelyn knew the entire human race had to love the world unconditionally if she was going to help reverse what they had done to her. Chapter 2. Braniger. Thursday, September 9th, 2299, was a day of reckoning. While in class, Jaelyn questioned her professor repeatedly about what the government was doing and what has been done about their current situation involving climate control. Her fellow classmates were dumbfounded about why she was drilling him on those points. After class, Professor Branniger pulled Jaelyn away from the other students and asked her why was she fixated on the sun. Her answer was, "I'm sure you and many others notice that our sun grows warmer each year. I am not the only one who feels this way. Back in June in 1997, there was a paper written called The Once and Future Sun by an astronomer named Richard W. Pogue. In his paper, he stated the life cycle of a star from birth in a dense stellar cloud to its final end is a process that lasts anywhere from a few million years for the most massive stars to many billions of years for stars like the sun. Now, we are seeing some of those results happening." He replied, "We knew that, but we hope we had more time to prepare humanity for those changes that are about to take place. We had already started working on the problem of climate change. The moves we made helped slow the warming by creating livable dwellings that uses less energy to sustain life all year round. With the upcoming changes in temperatures, we're doing this in conjunction with cleaning up the planet. If a person desired to live outside of our cities, then they too have a chance to acquire the same materials needed to sustain the exact protocol life has here. And, by the way, our car ships have performed much more efficient than ever. I remember fossil-fueled vehicles we had long ago. When we got rid of them, that started the most basic cleanup of our time. There's so much more we need to get done. So I want to ask you, Jaelyn, would you like to get on board and help us out?" Lars McRae and Saren Hughes and a few other guys and gals scanned the outskirts of town for cleaning the barriers the outliers leave in a mess. Those two guys signed up 9 months ago, and they are making some progress with those people. Here, put their numbers in your phone and give them a call. Chapter 3, Responsibility. He paused to give her their numbers as he continued to explain the situation of the outliers. These outliers still resist change. They seem to believe the old ways are not causing the problems. They think it's about the sun, and they have been passing this nonsense down for many, many years. Jaelyn replied, "Sir, you can't deny the sun isn't heating the earth. One of the smoking guns is how much the sun's rays are penetrating the atmosphere. It has already broken through the layers, and now we're close to losing our troposphere. Once that happens, we're done. Well done. Now, what do we do about it? Do we continue to build shelter for the people when we know that maybe our solutions may not work? Or do we find more ways to counteract what the sun is doing? Or do we continue to find ways of leaving the planet? Spraying the skies doesn't help. It's contributing to the erosion of our atmosphere. Along with adding the dust, it's only hurting, and we need to stop doing that. Brannigan replied, but at the moment, that's all we have. We do it a few times a week because it helps, but it doesn't help the bigger picture. We have found ways to use quantum physics to slow the future down and resume changing the climate the way we think it should be. One hope is our underwater cities are thriving. This experiment is still undergoing a trial period. We have yet to deal with an extreme weather event involving a hurricane. We just hope those cities hold. If not, then we will lose many lives. They knew that when they signed the waivers to live down there. At the most, everything is an ongoing project. Now, will it sustain itself? We hope so. Think about what I asked you about scanning the outskirts. And after you complete that, then come see me. I may have a place for you in the agency. I like how you think. Well, I will. As a matter of fact, I will contact them as soon as I get home. Should I be surprised that I might receive backlash from them, Professor? She asked. No. That's the reason why I ask you. You have a strong sense of courage and responsibility. You're tough, and you stand up for making things work. Look how you drilled me today in class. I can't allow that to go unnoticed. He laughed. Chapter 4. The Outskirts. On the way to her loft, while peering out the window of her sky ride, she noticed how rosy and pink the expanse was. Back in the day, it was told to her that a higher God colored and drew telltale signs in the air to make one feel happy and content. And it was also said that it was a constant reminder that mankind was not alone. No one ever questioned why that was said. It was just accepted as truth. As with everything else in life, no one ever questioned the over-the-top assault on nature as a whole. And those results ushered in an assault on the climate. She was determined to go all in to help make changes in a reality that was given up on long ago. Walking up the 7th floor of her loft, Jaelyn entered her apartment. Soon as she walked in, she opened the oversized, weather-worn, rustic brown drapes that covered the 20 by 13 feet windows. Turning the safety lock on the main one, she pushed open the dust-ridden window to receive some much-needed air. She threw her bags and herself onto the living room sofa. She laid her head back, and upon closing her eyes, she wondered to herself, how was she going to break the news of joining with the most egotistical young men she had ever known? This place, called the Outskirts, was no joke. The people who lived there did not believe in making any changes. They would never roll out the welcome carpet for people like her to try and change the ways they were used to. Legal extermination of their citizens had taken place years ago, and at the moment, there were no more to be scheduled anytime soon. This was a horrendous crime against humanity. But those who were left was given permission to procreate, but not at the expense of the government. These people had to make their own way of surviving in a world that did not include them. However, the truth of it is, now the government wants to reclaim the outskirts for other unknown reasons. In her meditation, she knew the government had more than its share of land. After all, most of the population that possessed more than their share lived comfortably. Everyone else who earned less than $4 an hour were given shelter as pay, were shoved in places together about the size of Delaware. She thought no one should have to live this way. The establishment was very afraid of global warming. They had always thought it was the people's fault. Never once did they think of who had the resources or the businesses or the manufacturing facilities to cause such chaotic calamity. If the CEOs were so smart, new and improved ways to fight the change would have been implemented long ago. Chapter 5. Saren Hughes. After resting on her sofa, she began to shed her clothing and immediately found herself in the shower. She took in the relaxing warm water that magically reset her overworked mind. The complications of finding ways to change the weather and its effect on a global scale was damn near impossible to maneuver. Could what little was left of the human race really survive if and when a bigger event occurred? She thought, could she really be part of such a huge undertaking? And why her? Why did the professor really choose her? What kind of contribution could she truly offer other than her cohesive facts about how the weather affected the population of yesteryear? By listening to him closely, it seemed he really did not believe in her facts. She went over and over in her head about what he said, about her being strong-minded and responsible. Was she the subject of an experiment? She sure hoped that wasn't the case. After wrapping her blonde tresses in a blue shark-themed towel, she sat on the side of her bed and picked up her transparent smartphone. She called her classmate, Saren Hughes. After the fourth ring, an older female voice answered. Hello? Hi, this is Jaelyn Pryce. I was given this number by my professor at Colorado State University. I'm calling to speak with Saren. Is he available? Saren, there's a phone call for you, she said while laying the phone down. Jaelyn can hear his response by him saying, I'll take it up here. She waited all of what seemed like 10 minutes when he finally answered. He asked, Hi, who is this? This is Jaelyn Pryce. I take the same courses in climate change adaptations as you do. Professor Alton Braniger gave me your number and Lars's number to join you on the trip to the outskirts of the city. I am assuming you have the last say on who goes and who doesn't. Hold on. Let me change phones." When he returned, he said, "First of all, why are you interested in the outskirts? That is one of the most desolate areas on the planet. I can't believe these people continuously live in squalor. We have tried to change their minds to come and join us and live the way we live. But they keep insisting on saying nothing is going to help the change and the situation that we're all are in. They say the sun will judge us." Chapter 6. I Need Answers. Jaelyn sat quietly, taking in his reasoning of why they wanted to stay there. When she knew, deep down inside, those people had a point. She said, "I'd like to talk to them myself and see why they don't want change. The strides that we have made will be beneficial for them as well. There are ways the bureaucracy can maneuver around them. It's known for gentrifying certain areas to get them up and producing a better quality of life. They must know something we don't. Have you asked them?" "Yes, I have, but I keep getting the same answer. The sun is getting hotter, and there's nothing we can do about it. Be ready to go first thing in the morning. The drive is a long one, and I want to be there before 9 a.m. It gets really hot by then," said Saren. Jaelyn placed her phone on the side table and lay down in her bed, all the while thinking of tomorrow. She couldn't get it out of her head. Why would the people refuse to gain a better life for themselves? Well, she was determined to get down to the bottom of it. She was going to find out why, if no one else would. Professor Branniger was right about her. She was committed. Upon awakening, Jaelyn silenced the alarm at 5 a.m. She stepped into her slippers and drug herself to the shower. Pulling back the curtains, Jaelyn turned on the valve. She wanted to wake up instantly. Bracing herself, she entered the cold water. She immediately experienced the chill of a lifetime. 5 minutes was more that she could stand before switching on the hot valve to combine the waters to a more tolerable condition. Still, she couldn't get it out of her mind. Why would anyone want to live in dusty and desert-like conditions when the people in the outskirts could clean up the area? What was so depressing for them to not take the initiative to join in with the other half of the nation to defeat climate change? Jaelyn was ready by 7:30 a.m. when 2 car ships arrived and remotely rang her doorbell. She walked out on the balcony's landing and got in. Noticing the faint plume of smoke spewing out the back of the ships, she thought, was this acceptable in accordance with the New World's order? Climbing high above the towering skyscrapers at 40,000 feet, Jaelyn looked down at the landscape of the city. It was beautiful. But how does the uppermost layers of the earth handle the emissions from the new fuel that was coming out of all the bustling sky vehicles? How? Chapter 7. 2 things. Due to reversing the negative side of climate change, was this permissible? The significance of changing from one bad habit to another is no change at all. Maybe the Outskirts was much more knowledgeable than one thought. A young man who sat in the front seat of the car ship leaned back to extend his hand out to greet her. "Hey, my name is Lars McRae. Glad to see you on board. Saren tells me you attend Branniger's class lectures." "My name is Jaelyn Pryce, and I am in the class he has in the afternoon. But I am really interested in the mindset of these people you two have been visiting for months now. Let's get right down to it. Two things I'm curious about. One is, why are they afraid to conform to climate change? And two, how come after all of this time, you all have not been convincing enough to get them to change their mind?" "Well, it's not easy to convince a group of people who I believe are part of a cult of naturalists, but not in the way of conforming to the rules in which our government has laid down. They want to do things their way, and it's not working for them," he replied. Saren spoke up and said, "Our problem isn't so much from the people. It's from their so-called president, Eli Carson. He controls their minds. He tells them it doesn't matter if we try and clean up our home. We're all going to fry. That's an insidious thing to say to millions of people who adore you. We're hoping you can change his perspective and hopefully get him to see reason." "He sounds like a tough nut to crack," said Jaelyn. "Nut is not the word," replied Lars. Jaelyn had never met anyone who was crazy or mad as a hatter, but there was the first time for everything. She was game and looked forward to this adventure. They had been in the air for 35 minutes when Saren announced they were crossing over the fault line that protected the two very different worlds. 20 minutes later, they landed in the Outskirts. Their security detail remained with both car ships, while one of them accompanied the 3-person team. Leaving the pristine surroundings of her domicile to this dry, desolate environment was a shame before the heavens. How could people live this way? Living in tons of garbage on the streets, crumbling buildings, and unpaved sidewalks. They lacked bathing and grooming. To her, these people were homeless with homes. Had they no shame? Had they no pride? "Here, put this on. The outskirters are used to the polluted air. We are not. This will help you breathe," said Saren. Chapter 8. The Air We Breathe. He handed her a helmet with a miniature breathing apparatus attached on the top. She put it on. It was somewhat difficult to do and absolutely very uncomfortable. Holding her head up was a chore, but necessary if she wanted to breathe. The four was greeted by 8 of Eli's front men. All of them looked menacing and ready for battle to defend their property. From there, They were taken to his office building on the 10th floor. The inside of this building was filled with mold and mildew, as many of the buildings were. The gray paint on the walls had been peeling for some time now, and nothing was done about it because, according to Eli, soon it would all be irrelevant. When they reached midway, another group took them to a holding area in which they were thoroughly searched and questioned as to why they came back. Saren spoke up and told them that a new member would like to meet President Carson and have a talk with him. Jaelyn, on the other hand, was surprised by his answer. The plan was to follow his lead, and yet he hung her out there all alone. What was she going to say to him? "All right, come with me. You three stay there," said the man. Walking up the remaining set of steps, the graffiti on the walls were telling a different outcome. Although the artwork was a masterpiece within itself, the message it carried was gruesome. The construction of all the buildings, homes, and everything associated with human life was gone. Charred, dead bodies, skeletons of all forms, shapes, and sizes lay everywhere. Mounds of dust piles dotted the streets. The sky was crimson red with no sign of life to be found anywhere. Who would depict something like that? Even though Jaelyn knew a lot about the coming nova, in her mind, she was hoping she was wrong about it. Wrong enough that it would give them time to leave the planet. After climbing to the top floor, Jaelyn was awestruck at how nice and clean it was in the president's office. The entire 10th floor was filled with his people. Secretaries, heads of state, security, and everything that came with being a president. "Come over here, young lady. Sit with me and I'll tell you the truth of it all," said Eli. Jaelyn walked over and cautiously sat down in a comfortable leather chair. "You want something to drink?" he asked. "No, thank you, sir," she replied. "Well, at least your mama taught you some manners. Not like those other two smart-ass boys who have been coming here for months now. I'm not going to tell them shit, but I'll tell you. Hell, I'm going to show you what I know. Come on, let's go." Chapter 9. Change. She followed him and his security team to a private elevator. They traveled down past 10 floors. When the elevator stopped, they were 36 floors down. Eli directed her to a huge door. His security detail produced a set of keys to open the door. Once it was open, there, in the middle of this large room, was a replica of a dried-out, desolate earth. And on the wall was a gigantic map of all the countries. The way Jaelyn interpreted its meaning was that everything beginning from the east was charred or burned like a wave of water. It continued to travel westward until everything was gone. This was disturbing to her, as she could not believe her eyes. She asked, "Where did you get this?" "You're a smart young woman. You should know where they came from. From a basement in a city called the Vatican. They were given to me when Rome fell again in 2142. It tells me that a burned out sun is about to go supernova on us very soon. Remember the first collider that was assembled in Switzerland? Well, this is the result of tampering with and reconstructing the DNA of nature. There were many things that came out of that place that we never knew about. Go ahead, take as many pictures as you want. This is your future." Years ago, I learned that most of the people who knew the answers of this revelation got off this planet after their people promised they would come after them thousands of years ago. The promise was kept. They will never again be oppressed or mistreated like thugs, criminals, or less than. They would never have to deal with this anymore. They were everything they claimed to be. They left us to our own devices, and now we are stuck with nowhere to go or to even survive if we had the ability to do so. So go back and tell your people that there is no need for climate change because it's over. The universe has done it already. The sun will be purging us all real soon. So happily try and live out whatever life you have left. The people here are quite satisfied doing what they do, and that's living from day to day. You, my dear, along with all of us, have been dropped into an abyss. Jaelyn was escorted out and back to her classmates. Nothing much was said while they walked back to their car ships. Saren and Lars tried to question her on their return home. She never said a word. Early Monday morning, she called her professor to inform him that she needed to hold a meeting with him, his constituents, and the scientific community. A meeting was called later that evening in the auditorium. Jaelyn presented her facts and the pictures she took of the proof that climate change was futile. Moments later, they all left quietly to prepare, just as the people in the outskirts had done years ago, living like there was no tomorrow. Still, Jaelyn felt there was hope. This concludes the reading of Mental Climate by Seta Asset. Copyright 2021. All rights reserved. Stay tuned to hear more of Seta Asset. Thank you.